Welcome to another episode of Three Keys of My Success. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman, and on this episode, I get to speak to another amazing doctor, and here's who he is.
Hi, my name is Scott Wagner. My practice is in Charlottesville, Virginia. I've been practicing here for 25 years this year, and I love treating patients, and I have figured out how to blend medical and chiropractic together in harmony. And we have this great interdisciplinary practice where we have multiple doctors and multiple facets of way to treat people. And I'd love to share the secrets of why chiropractic works medically and why medical doctors should love referring to chiropractors.
Hello and welcome to Secrets of My Success, part of For the Love of Chiropractic podcast series. On each episode, I'll be interviewing one highly successful doctor or business person, asking them what are their 3 keys of success or secrets they've used to make themselves so highly successful. So let's get started with today's show. So I have the pleasure of having on the phone with me today, Dr. Scott Wagner. Scott, are you there?
Yeah, I sure am.
And I'm glad we finally got to catch up after going back and forth several times. So I know you mentioned in the introduction that you've been a chiropractor for 25 years. Where did you go to school?
I went to Life University in Atlanta.
All right. So as a graduate of Life, let's turn the clock back before that. How is it you ended up going to chiropractic school?
Yeah, it's a great story. I never in the world wanted to go to chiropractic school. I was a PhD resident in orthopedic program at Vanderbilt, and my specialty was biomechanics of joints. I did a lot of research in scoliosis with gait and scoliosis with lifting and rotating with sports medicine. My basis was I had a master's degree in sports medicine, matriculated into medical school. Found that I didn't really like the ortho surgery part, so I went into the biomechanics part, which seemed to be my calling. I got a job in the '96 Olympics, and the responsibility I had was evaluating the athletes that I was hired for: biomechanical strength testing, running, digitometry, force plates. A lot of interesting equipment at that time, which is like normal now, I think, when people watch video games and see the little balls on people. But we were using that to try to find athletes' performance measures, injuries. And the IOC at that point had commissioned 3 chiropractors because around the world, the chiropractor was very kind of new in sports medicine in '96. And I was in charge of them. I didn't even know what they were. So it was kind of funny. And after working with multiple athletes, so at that point, the chiropractors were just, were told if the athlete had back pain, they go over here. If they have neck pain, they go over here. And that's what the only directions we got. And as I started sending those people, the athletes that had back pain or hip pain and whatnot, I just noticed that their whole postural angles changed, their strengthening was changing, and so from the technology that we were studying. So I'd go over there and watch their technique, and every chiropractor seemed to do the same thing there. They were checking their legs, and they're checking their strength, and they were adjusting everything, not just their area that we instructed them to adjust. They were adjusting everything.
You know how those chiropractors are.
Well, it was just like, you go to medical school, your patient tells you back's pain, you look at the back. My knee's hurting, you just look at the knee. And that's how traditionally medical people are trained. And
right.
In fact, the insurance companies to this day will not let medical doctors float around different areas. The only reason you're able to go to other areas is if you have a sports medicine specialty. And a lot of times sports medicine, we're not really worried about insurance companies. We're worried about fixing the athlete.
Sure.
So I always found that sports medicine was really the altruistic form of medicine from a mechanical standpoint. And mind you, we're working with usually healthy, active, overuse patients. But, the idea is it was all mechanical, and it was all recovery. It was all about inflammation. And then what we found was, my measurements didn't lie to me. So the physics can't lie and the science couldn't lie. So I always joke when I was going to chiropractic school, so, I had already figured out how this works. And the chiropractors used to laugh at me, and they go, "What do you mean?" I said, "I already know chiropractic works scientifically. I have data that shows how chiropractic works." And they're like, "Yeah, the power that made the body heals the body." I'm like, "Sure, but that's not the science of it that you could turn into an insurance company and get paid for." and they used to laugh at me like, "Well, I'm going to be all cash practice." I said, "Okay, I'm not. I'm going to actually use the science to get people better." And that's what intrigued me to go into chiropractic school. I had a funny pathway, because when I didn't want to go to school. The Olympics was over. Atlanta Hawks and hired me to do the same biomechanical studies, because they found out what I was doing, and they had some people that wanted me to look at. They were actually practicing at the Life University, because the Olympics, they built that facility for the Olympic athletes to train at. So we were using that facility. So I just started working there, and then the owner of the president of owner, I guess, was Sid Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just, started talking to me, started seeing what we were doing. And he said, "Boy, I want you to work here." I'm like, I said, "Well, what's that look like?" Well, he said, "We need a sports medicine department." So, and that was really fun for me, because I didn't know you could adjust hands and elbows. I was like, "What?" And I was like, that would be really helpful to know that if I'm trying to fix them, and if they're not moving. And we had really no way of evaluating, MRI, see if there was tears and stuff like that.
Sure.
So eventually I said, I didn't really have a career path at this point. And I was like, okay. And the job was pretty good. And then I kind of negotiated maybe some free schooling. I thought, can I just take these classes that teach me how to crack the spine? And of course, he didn't like me saying that. He goes, "Boy, you got to learn about chiropractic and the power of it." I'm like, Well, I wasn't really doing anything, and I was getting paid, and he agreed to bartering. So that was kind of fun. So I think I did my first 3 years were just covered by Sid. And, and it was kind of fun, because I was in the sports medicine department sharing what I learned about biomechanics. And then I was still reinforcing that when we, and I actually started playing rugby, because this was great. I was actually doing live subjects, and they had a really competitive rugby team there. So, and I used to play growing up. So I was like, yeah, I'll play. And it was fun. I was still young and still in pretty good shape for my pro career. And so it was just a natural. So there again, those biomechanics, all these chiropractors were adjusting each other, and I was rehabbing them. I was like, "Oh, you need to do this exercise and this exercise." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, you just can't just crack that wrist. You got to do this with it." Mm-hmm. And so again, I just started reinforcing what I learned in the short term with the Olympics. And I was just really getting, I was only 27 at the time, I think, 28, maybe 27. I was 29 when I graduated. So it was like, I was just like, this is great. This is like free residency. And then I had all these neurologists and radiologists at my beck and call, with this teaching physician and his thing. So I just started hanging out with them and listening to their seminars. So, I got I got all the radiology, MRI stuff, neurology stuff I ever wanted. And they were just sitting right there. These guys were really smart, but they're just teaching at the college at whatever level. So I was able to take advantage of that. So it really kind of gave me a pretty confident and exciting day that I want to practice what I know. And there was really no one else that I could go to. I couldn't go to an orthopedist. I couldn't go to pain management. I couldn't go just chiropractic. I couldn't go sports medicine, because at that point, really no one accepted it. It was pretty young. So funny enough, I went to MUSC, South Carolina. There was a chiropractic office there that I got a job. I was able to finish some of my residency stuff at the university there. And I learned a lot about the business, so I got some confidence that I could do this on my own. I went into this guy's business, and he was doing no rehab. I think he was making $70,000 a month. And at that point in time in 2000, one that was killing it in chiropractic, and I was like, okay, I guess so. I don't know. I've never run a business before, you know. Yeah. So that's then I took this guy's business from 70,000 a month to 180,000 a month because he knew nothing about rehab or rehab codes and insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was really happy to hire me, and I'm like, no, I think I could do this on my own. And funny enough, just I'm pretty spiritual, and I never heard of Charlottesville, Virginia, but somehow there was a MDDC practice for sale, and I called about it, and it all worked out, so to speak. And then within 3 months, the university hired me as a team doctor because they heard chiropractic could help, and I had a medical degree, so they wouldn't be embarrassed to hire me.
Sure.
Yeah, because it was really kind of, it was at the forefront where you weren't hearing ESPN announcers like, oh, look at that hit, he's got to go see a chiropractor. Like, that wasn't the time. I'm not old right now, but that was like, what, a chiropractor? Those guys are quacks. So that's when I graduated. That's what was going on at the time, in sports medicine. So, and I had this, like, all this stuff in my head. I was too young to prove it, but I had enough PhD background that I know I had to kind of statistically do all this stuff. So I bought that practice, and it was seeing, I don't know, maybe 250 people a week. And and then I met my wife, and then she worked the front, which I was terrible at, obviously. And I just really got to just spend time with patients and grow the practice. So at some point we had probably 4,000 people a month come in for visits. And I probably employed about, 5 or 6 chiropractors as well.
Wow. So
I know.
So tell me, tell me a little bit more about that practice. What made it so unique? I mean, obviously you as an MD-DC and the other chiropractors. Tell me more about that. Build that out for me.
Yeah, well, we in sports medicine, we really try not to use drugs, because athletes can't perform under drugs. So we always had a non-drug kind of usage. And I knew how to give over-the-counter stuff and tell people how to mix stuff, over the phone if they really wanted to combine, like, a muscle relaxer, like Midol with something, acetaminophen. You could get probably the same thing you wanted to at the prescription. But we always try, to do this because the natural way, like sports medicine, how I was trained is, the athlete feeling the problem is the best way to identify it biomechanically. And then you design the rehab program to fit that. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine that we designed this rehab, all these years I was designing these awesome rehab programs, but the spine was crooked. Mm-hmm. Or I didn't know, I wasn't able to look in with a weight-bearing x-ray and or something like that. So it was great, because I was, really on my own. I really didn't have a lot of, like, mentors, like, that did both. I just kept on disciplining myself in both. So I did a lot of, I still did continuing education in sports medicine. I still obviously tried, life at university was really good at teaching me a lot of techniques. I wasn't committed to any one of them. I just used every single one of them, from an analysis standpoint. And I just reaffirmed it with exercises. And over the years, I think I found out where I found out where the patient's problem was coming from, not just where they felt it. And chiropractic was such a huge component, convincing people eventually when their symptoms in a way, showing where it was coming from. And so that practice got so big because I became the guy, right? You go to this guy, man, you don't have to go anywhere else, right? So that was a funny thing. I was a team doctor, so I came into a new place I'd never lived before and had immediate credibility. And so I was on the sidelines with teams or, on TV, and it was really fun time. So I was young, I had a lot of energy. More is better. Like, how else do you make money in chiropractic? You just, you put more people on tables, right? Sure. And that was my business 101. And so, so we grew this thing to a monstrous thing, and we hired practice management people. They couldn't believe it. They would kind of try to model it, but it was, I think the thing was just the secret of learning the neurology of the muscle and the neurology of chiropractic, and learning how to put that together and looking at the chronicity of disease, not just the subjective, what they came in for, objectively finding stuff that was actually wrong with them. And chiropractors were pretty good at understanding, like, hey, you're supposed to have a curve in your neck, right? But I figured out why they didn't. And so we went into a lot of motion study, x-ray stuff I brought into the clinic at a very, very early time of that. And like for fluoroscopy units, and that would show people that they had tears in soft tissue, and it wasn't just always degenerative diseases, right?
And now, if I remember correctly, and from our first conversation, you had told me that you actually went on to build almost a mini hospital.
Now I do have that. So now we're not seeing 4,000 people a day because we're able to offer standing MRIs. We have a full pain management, and a lot of chiropractors are like, well, that's not good for you. I'm like, well, if you've been in a lot of pain, you probably don't want an adjustment if you can't move. And doing interventional pain management is better than surgery. And if I can get you out of pain and get you back under a physical medicine rehab program that includes chiropractic and we do a lot of IVs to drive down inflammation and nutrition, because the human body needs nutrition to build tissue, right? And so if we're going to truly get people to wellness care, once a month. So that practice before, that model was faulted because people were coming in once a month were really not well. I was missing things, right?
Of course.
And so then I leaned back to my medical roots and metabolic diseases, and I started finding ways to integrate, like medically, what we can do. So we just expanded our medical licenses in the clinic, which was pretty easy. So we've got more diagnostics, we've got brain scans, we've got NCVs. We truly find out, and like unfortunately, we don't treat people right away as much as we used to anymore. We diagnose them perfectly. And in that process, we still do a lot of pain management if they're high pain management. But if they're chronic pain management and they come in like, it's the same old, I was trying to give you guys a shot. We diagnose them a lot more, and we really show them the story of how they got here. And every time we tell the story, the patient goes, yeah, I remember that. I'd probably happy when I did this. And it's almost like you have to bring them back, because we have the evidence, but they don't have the subjective. So we use a lot of good objective stuff.
Scott, that's awesome. Time is running away from us.
Yeah.
And so you have become a huge success. Mini hospital, MRI. Standing MRI. Excuse me. Standing MRI.
Yeah, lying into MRI is useless for most chiropractors.
So I've got to ask you, being the huge success that you obviously have become, I want to talk about your 3 keys of success that you want to share in the next 10 minutes, because that's all we have left.
Yeah, huge success. I think it's passion. I think if we go to every day I wake up, I don't go, oh, I got to go see patients. It's just part of my nature. And I think my surrounding peers, there's never a party or a question. I've never been home on time when I went on a patient kit, if that makes sense. So it's always like there's only an argument if I promise to be somewhere. And I'm one of those guys that I've engaged with patient work. I've never thought about it anything differently. So I think you have to have passion. You have to love what you do. I don't care what field you're in. You just have to have passion. And then I learned more from my failures than I ever did my successes. And I think I could probably thank all my mentors from coaches. We didn't ever start or practice a season with the intention of just showing up and hoping we won. It was like that intention, you're supposed to win if you practice correctly and you work hard. So I think that never really left me from my family, from my coaching, and just the intention is that was it. There was just and if you love what you do and you want to win, you're only going to learn where you fail. And so my failures from patients is like, I wonder why this one didn't work as well as the other one. And just applying that. And I think over the course of my 25 years, I think there's the powers to be really do make sure that we do not join together. It's just because there's no way I'm just not that brilliant because I'm not doing anything like crazy, but no one else is doing what I'm doing and getting the results.
Sure.
So therefore, like I've seen, like we do a lot of regenerative medicine now, but I've seen regenerative joints with healthy people. I've seen spines correct their position. Scoliosis, we're reducing them 20-30%. And we don't use one brace. And so there is something that I luckily tapped into that my life mission now is to make sure, when I'm dead, this becomes standardized. So people that don't know can just not get rods in their back or surgeries for chronic issues.
Oh, absolutely. I love everything you're saying. So if passion is your first key, and learning from your failures as your second key, what is your third key of success?
I guess just legacy. I guess I don't know. I don't know how to put it. I'm 55 years old. People say I don't look it. I don't know. I just don't look in the mirror or anything. I don't look in the mirror like, I better get on with my life or do something else. And a lot of my friends now just, they're talking about retirement, and I never do. So I just think I've been blessed to have the sequencing of life that I've had. And I think just my purpose, just that purpose, I don't know if you call it legacy or just, passion and purpose, I guess, and it sounds kind of corny, but I look back on it and, Sid Williams used to say, it's purposeful. You got to be purposeful. And my coaches used to say, you got to have passion, so I've just lived by those rules. And the nicest thing about it is when I don't live by those rules, I think someone, God or karma, comes and smacks me in the head and says, get back on track.
It's nicer when it's a tap on the shoulder, but sometimes we got to be smacked on the back of the head. Scott, in our last 3 minutes, I have 3 more questions to ask you because time has just run away from us.
Okay. All right. Okay.
My question is, can a young doctor getting out of school right now, is it possible for them to become a huge success?
It is. I think if they had a pathway and a good mentorship, and we don't hire new grads, unfortunately. We hire guys that have been beaten up by the system, and now they come here and say, wow, this is really refreshing. I get to make $140,000, $150,000 a year. I get to order tests. I get to learn what they mean. I get to learn what blood work means. I get to see it changing. So yes, it is, but I think there's a pathway. Now, mind you, if this was the residency that they can go make right out of school, $65,000, $70,000 a year working in the residency, learning all this stuff, right? And working in an emergency department.
Okay. Right, but chiropractors don't work in emergency departments because that just isn't how our world is set up, unfortunately.
But it should be. That's what I'm saying. So the pathway to success would be finding someone that you enjoy being mentored, and then furthering that connection by just don't say that's not the finish line. The finish line would be learning all the things out there that are helping people.
And how do you define business success?
Business success?
Yeah.
I guess it's get that red or green line, but it's for me. My motto has always been patients first, compliance second, and profitability third. And if you keep those things in order that way, that's why you should be in this business. It has to be the patient first, and you have to do it legally. And then you really just, the profits should come. Patients feel it, patients know if you're being real or not. And I think that's those 3 rules I've never stopped. Doesn't matter how busy or big this clinic has gotten. I
love that. So if that's business success, how do you define personal success?
Personal, I think it's because I've accepted that I'm different, one, because I like being a chiropractor, and there's no chiropractor that looks at a drug ad on TV and says, yeah, that makes sense, right? So I think when you accept that you're different, you just do different things, or you just find the things that make you happy, right? So, sometimes it's just changing things up in your life, whether you like golf or that, and make it challenging as well. So, I race cars professionally now. I play in pro amateur golf, and I have that little bit of something else that I know I'm not going to be a professional at, but it reminds me what I really am supposed to do. So personally, my wife probably hates me because I'm always doing crazy things, but I just got a lot of energy, so I have to satisfy those things, and I accept it, and she accepts it, and that's what just keeps me excited every day waking up.
That's really cool. I have one last question for you because I know that we've already run over. My question is, if somebody has heard this interview and says, man, you know what? This guy is awesome. But man, I don't even know where to start. What's the first thing that you would say to them?
Gosh, I guess, what did they hear? What did they hear that they liked? That they liked the sports medicine, Did they like that I saw lots of patients? Did they like that I have a hospital, and how did I get there? Or did they just like that I put patients first, and all that happened? All this happened because I always put patients first, and then I worked hard. I worked hard. So everybody's got definitions of success. I don't think it's money driven. It's getting up every day and loving what you do. I never understood why chiropractors took Thursdays off. So we worked 6 days a week when I was younger. So I definitely think if you're a young chiropractor, get exposure, and don't lock into one thing, and just work hard and love your patients.
Wow, that's awesome. Scott, I can't thank you enough. This has been amazing getting to spend this time with you. Dr. Scott Wagner, you are an inspiration, and what you have built and continue to do is just absolutely amazing and a beacon for the entire profession. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to share with me today.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate it. If I can change this profession for the better, I'm all about it.
That's what we're all trying to do. Scott, thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.